Hi, this is Jen and Joette from KEILY, Mira Law, and today's episode of Real Legal Talk, we are discussing crumbling foundations. It is a very important topic, very controversial topic right now, and it's definitely a worry that a lot of buyers and sellers are having in today's market.
So we're going to break our video down into a couple of different steps. First, we're going to give you a non-scientific but brief informational background as to what the crumbling foundation issue is. Then we're going to talk about some tests that can be done to discover whether or not you have the setting for a potential crumbling foundation. And then we're going to discuss some real estate forms that are necessary in the process of buying and selling a home when it comes to disclosures for crumbling foundations. And finally, we'll look into some changes that are coming down the road that we all should be aware of. So first, we'll talk about the non-scientific background, a very brief overview of what does it come from, what causes crumbling foundations. And what we've discovered, or what has been discovered over some research, is that there was a quarry in Wellington, Connecticut that basically had a mineral pyrrhotite that was used by a lot of concrete companies to make residential homes for foundations for residential properties.
In certain areas of Connecticut.
Yeah, the quarry in Wellington, Connecticut was used, basically northern Connecticut, northeastern Connecticut was used by those concrete companies to build homes in that area. So that's why we see the focus, the hot spot, with a lot of the homes in and around Stafford Springs, the radius around Stafford Springs. And that quarry is no longer being used now since 2016 for any residential purposes. But basically any homes or any garages or any additions that had foundations built between 1983 and 2015 are a potential risk. So that's sort of just the background of what the mineral is and where it comes from. Now what it does is the mineral, when exposed to water and air, which a foundation can be exposed to both when it's underground and even above, some that are above ground. When it's exposed to water and air, it can crack and then it can eventually crumble. And once that happens, that is an irreversible damage and has to be fixed. And the only way to fix it is a complete overhaul of your foundation, which is not cheap.
There are two ways to find out whether or not your foundation has this issue. The first is a visual inspection, and that is just done by a professional engineer who does a visual inspection of the property. And obviously there's a cost to that, but it is less expensive than the second way of finding out whether or not your home is affected by this issue, which is to do a core sample. Core sampling, the price varies depending on how many samples you take from your foundation. And as a buyer, you need to know that if you purchase a home that later shows signs of a crumbling foundation and you did not do these inspections, whether it be visual or core testing prior to the purchase of the property, that you may not be or you are not eligible for any state assistance.
Right. And the state has come up with a program now, an insurance company that is out there to help in the event that you do this testing and find out that there are problems. They don't reimburse the entirety of the testing amount, but up to a certain point, and you should check in advance for eligibility purposes. But even with assisting towards the replacement of the foundation itself, you can't have access to those funds unless you're doing the testing. And as Joette said, the visual inspection can range anywhere from about $400 to $1,000, and the core inspection can range anywhere from $1,400 to $4,000, depending on the samples that are taken. So it is a lot of money. It's an investment, and that's going to lead to changes, I'm sure, as we were talking about before, during negotiation periods for buyers and sellers alike. So that's definitely something to look out for.
Now, as a realtor, if you're watching our video, there's two main forms that you should be referencing in your transaction. First is the advisory that goes for buyers, and that is a document that is a one-page document signed by buyers, basically acknowledging them that this is an issue in these areas. And then the second form is a advisory and a disclosure that is signed by buyers and sellers, and that form specifically asks the sellers if they are aware of any issues regarding their foundation, have they had any testing done, and what are the results of those testing. And again, that is signed by the buyers and sellers. So that's something that you should be aware of when you're putting a transaction together as a realtor.
And there is, we already have something very similar to that with the property condition disclosure form that sellers provide or give a credit, obviously, is the law on that. And there may be, there are talks and there may be changes to that as well, where you see that now instead of doing a separate advisory form, they may be roping that into the property condition disclosure form in the future. We don't really know, but for now, that's what we have, are these disclosure forms that would require the seller, when asked in these specific instances, to disclose any information that they do know or any testing that they've had about their concrete foundation.
So this is an evolving topic that we expect to hear a lot about.
Especially since we find, or we've heard that these changes can take 10, 20, 30 years to show in a home. So we're really, the length of time that it takes to even know if this is an issue in your property means that we're going to have to be taking a lot of precautions. And even lenders are looking to take precautions in properties or in transactions where their buyers are buying in these hotspot areas. So we've heard, and the Connecticut Association of Realtors has also indicated, that they're hearing lenders are going to be requiring not just these disclosures on properties that are in these hotspot areas, but also that they have visual inspections done. And if the visual inspections come back showing signs, that then the core samples are done. So even the lending industry is going to see some changes as a result of this issue.
So as attorneys who do real estate closings day in and day out, Jen and I would not be surprised if the cost of visual inspections, core inspections, becomes a negotiation issue amongst buyers and sellers, and it may be something that realtors may want to take into account when they are negotiating contracts. So that's not, I'm not going to be surprised when I receive a phone call like that.
No, me neither. And to be honest, there's even something to be said for doing these disclosures across the board, even in properties that are outside of these hotspot areas, because now, as we've seen, these maps are being developed on a 6-month basis. There are new maps coming out, and they're showing properties that are even far outside of the Stafford Spring Radius area. We have some now that are showing in Naugatuck and Hamden, East Lyme. So of course they all have to be verified, but they're popping up in other areas, because you have to remember, it's not just about the building of the homes, it's about any extensions or additions, garages, etc. So there's definitely changes that are coming and precautions that are necessary to protect both buyers and sellers in this transition.
So stay tuned to KEILY, Mira Law and our updates as we bring you the latest news in the real estate industry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.